Hello and welcome to One on One today. My name is Fumi Unuajefe and my guest today is Dr. Denise Ejoh, and we'll be talking about cancer and cancer awareness in Nigeria. She's the CEO of Commodore Cancer Foundation, an NGO founded following the death of her mother, Margaret Ann Ejoh, and she now lives with cancer. She was diagnosed with breast cancer and she has undergone 3 brain surgeries and had gamma knife surgery using radiology to remove 7 tumors and undergone different treatment regimens to shrink 4 to 5 more tumors using chemotherapy. She's in active treatment following her last brain surgery in March 2022 when she was informed the cancer was still active and is now on a new drug regimen. Good afternoon, ma, and thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
how are you? I'm good. I can see. Thanking God.
Okay.
That's how we do it.
Thank God. So I always like to ask people first, what was growing up like for you? How was it? Where did you grow up and what was growing up? What was your childhood like?
Oh, to be honest with you, I think I'd say I had a fantastic childhood.
Oh, wow.
Let me put it in context. I was born in Lagos.
Okay.
I grew up, my mom was a teacher. My dad worked with Peak Milk, Wamco, I think that's what it's called now. And I went to school. I went to school in Yaba. I lived in Queen's College. I went to Queen's College and then moved on to Sokoto to go and complete secondary education. I have lived almost everywhere, every part of the country, to be honest with you. When I served in 1987, I was in Benue State, and they created 21 states then. I find it very interesting because it's awesome to actually know. I then traveled to 21 states in that NYC year.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I just kept, when you're a cop and I have a lot of things.
Places to go to.
Yeah, and I wanted to do it. And I had friends and classmates because I went to Federal Government College, Sokoto.
Okay.
So I had friends and classmates all over the place. And so you just, hello, how are you? Where are you? I'm coming. And you just go spend the night and keep going. And
do you speak Hausa?
I understand within the limits of what is very important to me, i.e. food, money, family and friends, and then you must learn the greetings.
Which university did you go to and what did you study?
I eventually finished at University of Sokoto, now today called Usman Danfodio University. I studied business management, majoring in finance.
Okay. So let me ask you, looking at Nigeria then when you were growing up and looking at Nigeria now, how much has changed? Because every time when I speak with older people and they tell us how Nigeria was and everything, I'm like, oh, well, we didn't see any of that. How much has changed and how much do you, or what are the things you wish that could be brought back?
How much has changed? Wow. Loads have changed. We lived in an era where we grew up with neighbors. There was no difference between a house help's child and a boss's child. It was a compound life. It was community living. Parents trusted the care. You know, even if you had house helps. Like I lived in Queen's College, and staff used to live there. Yeah. And the ice cream van, the Samco ice cream van, would come every Saturday, and all of us will run out to the Samco van. So, to be honest with you, I can't say, I actually am paying because I grew up and I had fun. Trust me on that. What has changed? Oh, it's heartbreaking now. And I'll give you why. For instance, like you say, I live with cancer. I grew up and I was sick. I was in Sokoto State. I was in actually today it's called Uzguso.
Okay.
And it's in Zamfara State. And I was very sick, and nobody knew what was wrong with me. It was during my WAEC time. I managed to get through the WAEC and ended up hospitalized and went into a coma. But do you know the funniest thing? I didn't go to private. I was seen in the general hospital in that town. My consultant, my doctor was a local. It wasn't a private system. I didn't lack anything, you know. What are the kids looking for today, the children? I don't use kids. What are the children looking for today? They want the luxuries of life. But we were not taught to be spoiled. We were taught to learn to have the skills to be resilient. Children today are not taught that, except you insist on ensuring your children get that. And I think that's one of the reasons why I eventually ended up in education, because no, I am heartbroken that even just the cancer disease, you don't have very far to go. Everyday illnesses, it's very expensive, and education, you know, the basic things that I did grow up with, I didn't think about, are no longer the basics. They are now the luxuries. That shouldn't be now.
Interesting. Well, okay, so now let's talk about cancer. First of all, what was it like for you when your mother was diagnosed? And how long between when she was diagnosed and when she passed on?
My mom was diagnosed with cancer in January of December, Christmas time of 2015.
Okay.
And she died that year. So she was diagnosed end of 2015. So, but I had found out she was very ill.
Okay.
At the end of 2014. I was on my way to America because I was doing a PhD at the time. And when she gave some hints that that the diagnosis wasn't looking good, and she thought it was cancer, that I now swapped the tickets round, and I came to the UK. I was here, I was in Nigeria. I went to the UK
To see her.
and with my family, all of us, and I said, you know what, this cancer, I'm not dealing. Let us all go and spend Christmas with her, just in case. And truthfully, it was the last Christmas we did spend with her. So that was firstly not a very easy time. And then she didn't tell us, you see. You know, this thing of not telling children. She told us she had cancer, but she didn't tell us the extent.
Okay.
So we kept having to navigate it. And then I said, okay, you know what, since I was working in Nigeria, and I worked with a fantastic family, I was heading a group of schools. So they always allowed me to go home, to come to England whenever she was doing chemo. So I would come to England and sit with her. My other siblings were there. I would use that to give them a break, and I would come and do chemo with her. So I think I came to England almost every month until the summer, when I left her and I said, okay, I'll see you as soon as I finish the program in half term. And I never did. And but I always remember her, the last thing she said to me before she went into a coma. And here she said to me is, look, make sure you look after my niece. That's my niece. That's her youngest grandchild. Said, never ever let her lack anything in this world.
Oh, wow.
So I just thought, and funnily enough, me and her are chalk and cheese. So it's quite nice to, I have very fond memories of my mom. I was sad, but what she went through allowed me to know what to do. Let me put it that way. Let me be very honest.
So was your diagnosis out before your mother passed, or was after she passed that you discovered? So what was that like for you?
A shock. I suspected that I was very ill because I had a headache, and I had been going to the hospitals for the 1 year. My mom was alive when I first realized I had a very bad headache. But because I'm a teacher and I was heading groups of schools and then consulting, it was just assumed, you know.
Stress
related, driving the traffic of Lagos, going on the planes to go and do other work all around the place, you know. You just assume. Assume is not always very good. But in the end, when I found out, it was after going to a hospital in Minna, where I was living, came back from Minna and went to Abuja, nothing. Came to Lagos and went to 4 different top hospitals here, nothing. And then one person now said, you know what, let's just do an MRI scan. They've just brought in one from my hospital. Let's just do it, and if there's nothing, then I'm going to leave it, because every other sign that we should have for cancer, you don't have. And then they did it, and I remember, because I had an excruciating headache, I sat down there, I was like, I couldn't sit up, the whole room was running around, and I thought, wow. And then the man said, he said, ma'am, we have to do a contrast. I said, what's that? He said, we have to put dye in your brain. I said, why? He said, because we can see something in your brain. I said, what does that mean? He said, it's a mass. I said, what's a mass? You know, you're arguing with somebody.
Yes.
I said, excuse me, sir, don't mess with me on this one. And then I left, and the next day they sent me this thing and said the report said I had 1 to 3 months to live.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, all right, that's very nice. And he gave me a list of different cancers because you have to do a biopsy.
To find out which
to
exact
find out
one.
exact, yeah. So I thought, you know what, Denise, you know you have a house, board your flight. And I luckily found a friend of mine, so I was able to get support to board without letting anybody notice I was ill. I think when I got into England, in 24 hours, I was admitted, and they found it. They themselves were shocked because they were like, you don't have anything, you just have a headache, you can go home. I said, me? No, I already saw it in Nigeria. I knew there was something wrong. So even in England, when they did all their tests, initial tests, they also sent me home. But because I'd seen it in the MRI in Nigeria, I was able to say, no, I'm not going home. I know something's wrong. And by the time they went up to do the CT, they didn't agree to do an MRI, CT scan. As soon as they did it, before I got downstairs, they said, admit her.
Oh, wow.
Because my brain was full of fluid.
Interesting. Okay, we'll take a short break. When we come back on the break, we'll continue this conversation. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. This is One on One. My name is Ejoh Jefe, and I have Dr. Denise Ejoh with me. And she was telling us her story of how she discovered that she had cancer. So they did a CT scan, and then they didn't let you go home. So what happened after that?
Then we started, first and foremost, because it was very swollen. What that means is that it was full of water now.
Yes, fluid.
So they had to use, there's something they give you, steroids, that's it. They had to give me steroids to calm it down. And so I spent that week in hospital, and I was told straight up, you have cancer. But I then knew that once you had one tumor, it doesn't necessarily mean it's cancer in the brain.
Oh, okay.
It can be a benign tumor. But once you have multiple tumors, it automatically translates you have cancer.
Great, okay.
So now they've got to find the cancer. But because I had issues in the brain, within 2 weeks, I had had my brain surgery in England. They were in a rush. They were in a hurry. But honestly, I don't think when they did it, they thought I would live because we were already in stage 4. We'd gone far. So
you were in stage 4 when you found out?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I live with stage 4 breast cancer, metastasizing in the brain. That's what a metastasis means. Once you've got a metastasis started to move, it is stage 4. So anybody that has a cancer that's gone to another organ, it means it's a metastasis. And that's when I knew. And I thought, okay, fine. So what are we doing next? But I had a young child who was in GS1. Yeah. So I needed to be positive for her. And I'd left her in Nigeria because I said, let's go to London. And she said, no, I'm not going with you. I'm not going. I'm staying here. When you come back, and I'm going to, she named her school she was going off to, so she was not even
interested.
Moving. Nah. But after that, either she comes to England for her holidays, but I then knew I couldn't look after her in Nigeria. If I took her to England with me, it was going to be very difficult to look after her because how would I do that? Yeah. If I get into hospitals, then I have to find people to go and look after her, or she would have to leave school. And she said she wanted to stay. Her sister was in Nigeria, her brother was in Nigeria. She was like, nah, I want to stay in Nigeria. So I thought, okay. And then we navigated till she finished GCSEs. And she did very well. So now she's in university, funnily enough.
Oh.
And still hanging in there. And I'm so grateful because we've gone 6.5 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well done. And so one of the things, so like the first time that I spoke with you and then I was told that you have cancer, I was like, it's not in your voice, it's not in your spirit, it's not, and then you're encouraging people. Of course, you have a show also on this channel that you're talking with people, you're encouraging people. How are you able to keep your spirit up? Especially, they told you had 1 to 3 months to go, and then here you are 6 years down the line. How have you been able to keep your spirit up? Because I can remember one time, I think I was last month or 2 months ago when I called you, you said you had a surgery and it was because your voice was even gone. Because I know that if probably your voice was not gone, you probably wouldn't have mentioned it. And you just carry on like, it's, and there I was, after I just finished speaking, I was like, oh my God, how do you do it? How do you keep your spirits up?
It's not about the spirits. First and foremost, I'm a very strong, before I got diagnosed, I actually said to myself that if the cancer was going to kill me, I would rather my children never went through the pain that I went through with my mom, because I had to watch my mom in serious pain and everything for 9 months. She died in October. So that really got to me. And so I made a decision and I said, look, I prayed and I said, if I am going to live, then let me live to be useful to other people who will go through this journey. And that will give me a purpose. And within a month, 6 months, I was already told I had to retire. And I was like, so at less than 50 now, how am I supposed to make my money? These are the realities of a cancer patient. Immediately you start working out, you've got school fees to pay, you've got children to feed, and you're looking at cancer and you're thinking, no, how am I going to get through this? I can't get through this. And that is so what makes me go is I have a purpose. And the purpose is forever, for as long as I have a voice that can encourage people to realize that one day everyone will die. But for the fact that you have the disease, you firstly have a heads up. So address your family issues and put your house in order. Secondly, ask yourself, what am I going to do with this to be useful? Because whether Muslim or Christian, we always have to be charitable. So be charitable in some way and serve community, because you have been given a second chance. No matter how many days it is or how many weeks it is, you have a second chance. And so that's where I draw my strength from, because I can't work full time anymore. So, and then just go around as normal, what we do as cancer patients, begging everybody else to give us money to fund our foundation so that we can help others, because that's all you can do, honestly.
So cancer treatment, I know, is expensive. Yeah. So how do you're not working anymore, so how do you fund the surgeries, and then you run an NGO? How do you, get funds to do all of that? Okay,
fortunately, I'm one person that I always tell people, if you have an opportunity to enter trials, try and check, do the homework. If it works for you, take it. Because that first removes a cost stress. Okay. And they monitor everything. The trials involves everything medical to do with you. So at least I had Gamma Knife. Gamma Knife is, at the time, was costing £10,000 per. I was like, where am I going to get this money from? But a surgeon who had the budget in the UK looked at it, and I went into his study. So I'm still in his study. When I had the surgery last year, they asked, should we give Denise another Gamma Knife? And I begged them, I said, you know what, this thing hurts, please. So if you can find another option, do it until we get to the point where, because it's my last attempt. The next Gamma Knife will be the last opportunity to do it. Because, it's a cut, it's radio.
Okay.
And now I'm getting to the end of opportunities to cut, because the cuts are cuts in the brain. So if you're cutting through the brain, there's a limit. It's the same spot. They're not moving it from anywhere. So you've got to be very careful. And so with all of that, you've got to make decisions. And I have had to make decisions. But take control of your healing. Take control of your mental health, because your mental health will go crazy. I always beg anybody that has cancer, if you can invite a counselor or a friend that is positive, not negative, and let them come. So put all your friends. The counselor taught me, put all your friends, put all everybody in boxes. So family are in boxes, friends are in boxes. My NGO is in a box. My NGO is the one that makes me very, very happy. So anything to do with my NGO, I'm very happy. Anything to do with education, I'm very happy. Those two, all right. Then my kids and my grandchildren, oh yes. Outside of that, everything else is in a box. And if you put it in a box, then if you are choked, you just close the box and say, you know what, I'm not engaging. And that helps you, because if not, you will go down. Where are you going to get money from? you can't, I try to make people understand, like what I'm here in Lagos for now, is the fact that the money is a challenge. And you can't, I found out in the process of my NGO that anytime we want to fundraise cancer survivors, we don't get as much money as other people. And do you know why?
Why? Because
the funders do not believe we're going to live long, so they will give us 500,000 or 1 million. But where they will give an organization 10 million, 50 million, they won't give us, because as far as they're concerned, we don't have a lot of years left. But I've done almost 7 years, and that would have helped. But luckily, like PlusTV does, you gave me a space, so that helps us to at least get the message out. There's nothing.
Okay, we'll take another quick break. When we come back on the break, we'll talk about cancer care in Nigeria. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We're discussing cancer and diagnosis in Nigeria. So let's talk about how cancer is diagnosed and treatment generally in Nigeria. What is it like? I know it's very expensive, but do people actually get proper diagnosis in Nigeria? Because you had said you had to go to 4 or 5 different hospitals before they now did an MRI and found out what it is. And how come it's still the same? I find out, because I spoke to some people, that it's still the same now, not very, it's not easily diagnosed, or sometimes when it's diagnosed, it's wrongly diagnosed, and most people have to travel out of the country to get, proper treatment, proper diagnosis. What's gone wrong with our health system?
Let me use data.
Okay.
Data says 1 in 2 people will get cancer globally as of today. Globally, so it's nothing to do. In Africa, or in low middle income countries, 90% of people who have cancer will die. In Nigeria, those statistics are slightly higher because it's not funded by the government. And we've got 200 million people. So you've got to look at it from the maths. 200 million people, 500,000 people, 100 million are going to get cancer. Who are the half is the key question. And how many can afford to get treatment is another question. So those are questions you have to start looking at. Now, on the treatment plans and the options you have, if you are diagnosed with cancer in stage 1 and 2, that's very early, which is quite easy to do if people did their checks and not run away and hide in churches and mosques.
Religious.
You most probably will find it quickly and get through it. A lot more people in Nigeria will go to the religious centers. It's not my portion, God forbid. And I say and I beg them, don't do that. Go and find. Another statistics that is very heart-wrenching is that we've only got about 50 qualified oncologists in Nigeria. I don't know what the data is as of today in light of the Japa syndrome.
Japa syndrome, yes.
So I know we got to 50. So now if it's less, that is horrendous. Because of the 50 that I'm talking about, how many of them are in the private sector? Because there's private and there's public. Public sector, yes, then we have quite a few people that can give you treatment in the private sector in Nigeria that works, and then you have the public sector. We have very good doctors in the public sector. They don't have the tools, they don't have the money, their patients don't have the funds. I found out because I'm a board member of the organization that makes, one of the organizations that makes the patent in Switzerland, and I found out that something like a drug called Tasubimab, I think that's how they pronounce it, is on the free treatment list globally, right? So countries are supposed to pay for any cancer patient who requires it, but we don't. It's not free in Nigeria. So it says those issues, how do you navigate around unless the government has a will to say, you know what, at least the ones that the global markets are saying are free, so that means they're significantly subsidized. Why don't we do those? At least that will reduce the death rates. So those are key things that are coming up, and how do you navigate them? I don't know.
Okay, sadly we run out of time, but just for a few seconds, I want you to encourage someone who has family that is, going through cancer, or someone is actually going through cancer, just a word of encouragement to them?
Okay, I'm going to talk direct.
To the camera.
To the camera. For anyone going through cancer, I appeal to you. Always ask, always seek help. Do not run away from it. Face it on. Once you've heard the diagnosis, please go and find an oncologist. That's their name. They are oncologists. They are the only ones that are specialists in cancer treatment. Outside of that, they then will give you all the extra people that will work with you, because it's a very big multidisciplinary treatment program.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dr. Denise. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's all we can take on one-on-one today. See you again sometime soon. My name is Ejoh.